Thank you all. What an enthusiastic group of people. Good morning. And thank you for all coming out this morning. I'm sure you had a late evening, as we all did. I was up till about 3 in the morning working on a new idea with my partner, Mark Masters, that I'm going to share with you for the first time. I teased it last night on the Tucker Carlson show, which is a great show, by the way. Tucker's a great guy. But first, I want to give you a quick little rundown. I'm an Italian-American. My mother's family came from the province of Avellino, the city of Nusco, mountains of Naples. My father, Sicilian, near Palermo, a little town called Torretta, of which they made me an honorary citizen recently. So ancient history and ancient Rome and the Italian culture is something very strong in me. My grandparents came from Sicily and Naples. My father's father, Sicilian, came and at the turn of the 19th century, enlisted in the U.S. infantry, was critically wounded twice, sent back on the field both times, has 2 Purple Hearts, oak leaf cluster. In that household, we were taught, speak of the English. Speak of the English. He had to take mandatory English classes, and they used to pass around an apple, and he couldn't say the word red. They would say, the apple is a red, the apple is a red. He finally said, the apple of your ass. He got so frustrated because he couldn't say red. My father, Salvatore, when Pearl Harbor happened, the next morning he enlisted in the U.S. Navy. His ship was torpedoed. He was in the water for 3 days. Never really talked about his experience. I'm sure he had PTSD, but they didn't talk about it. But every 4th of July, every Memorial Day, my dad put on his Navy uniform and raised the American flag in Dix Hills, New York, where I grew up. That's the image that I grew up with. He was a Knight of Columbus, man of faith. My mother was a woman of faith. And he gave me 2 books. He gave me a book called None Dare Call It Treason, and another one called Masters of Deceit, when I was about 11 years old. He says, I want you to read these and take from it what you will. Those books prophesized, for me, there were elements of them that were quite stunning, because in them they prophesized a concerted movement to take America from within. And over the years, some of what they had prophesized, I've seen happen. Prayer in school, education, life, culture, media. I coined the term on the radio show I do, the media industrial complex. And I was going to talk about something else, but I wanted to bring this up today because it's been in the news. The president's talked about it, and it's something that we're all aware of. And we need the media. We need a free press. No one is saying anything else. But at the same time, we need accountability and transparency. Now, in ancient Rome Republic, there was a law against something called calumnia. The word in English, which is derived from the Latin, is calumny. That law made it impossible to spread false rumors or lies against upstanding and virtuous political candidates. Impossible. This is ancient Rome. Why was this law created? Because good people had stopped running from office out of fear of character assassination or even worse. This is ancient Rome. The Roman people were getting only the worst types that were running for office at that time. So the anti-calumny law was purposely created to create a powerful incentive to the good and virtuous leaders to come back to politics. So that, what was the consequences of this? Of a man or a group of people activity that were actively lying maliciously, maligning a good man running for office in the Roman Empire. What was their accountability? If the false accuser and their accomplices could not prove their lies and vicious innuendos against the goodly candidate, that accuser would be found guilty of whatever offense that they and their ilk had culminated against their political opponents. This anti-calumny law was actually created to make it possible for good, virtuous men to run for office in ancient Rome. Let's go back to ancient Rome. Because if such laws existed today, we would see more men like Donald Trump and Mike Pence running for Congress or the Senate or the presidency, and more fake reporters perhaps going to prison for the very lies they make up to commit cruel character assassination against the very best of our American heroes. I was talking to Dan Schneider, and I want to thank Dan and Matt and Mercedes and all of CPAC and ACU for having me here. It's quite an honor to be here among all of you. And I mentioned this backstage as we were waiting for the audience to fill in a little bit. And he's told me of a book that was written about LBJ. And LBJ, when he was a senator running for the Senate, he told his campaign manager, he said, "Campaign manager, I want you to ask the question, have the press ask the question to my opponent that he's a pedophile." True story, in a book, a very vetted book, that he was a pedophile. And the campaign manager says, "Mr. Johnson, I can't do that. That's not true." And Johnson said, "I know that. I just want to hear him deny it." LBJ was a Democrat, by the way. So now, the media industrial complex. What do we have here? When something goes wrong with the White House, the president's staff or the cabinet member, what happens? There's a consequence, is there not? The president takes the heat, but the staff member or the cabinet member takes the consequence. This is what happens now. So let's create parity. And it's fine what happens. Consequences are important. This is our American way. But let's create parity. Let's create perfect equilibrium between the presidency and the Fourth Estate. If the media industrial complex, through misrepresentation, clogs up the president's agenda, what does it do? It emboldens the never-Trumpers and then allows them to affect weak vessels within the GOP. You understand? Weak vessels. And I hate to say it, I don't want to say it. Paul Ryan, perhaps. Okay? There might be names you all know and you know the others. Now, right now, let's take a press conference happening the way it goes down. President and or press secretary and the press corps convene. And of course he says, "Okay, Jim Acosta of CNN, go Jim." And Jim Acosta says, "Mr. President, Putin, Russia, Putin, exclamation point, Putin, comma, semicolon, Putin, Russia. Election, Putin, comma, Putin, Russia, election, comma, Putin, comma, dash, exclamation point." And I have a follow-up. Putin, election, comma, Putin, election, Assange, WikiLeaks, Putin, comma, Russia. Okay. Now, there is no accountability right now, is there? None at all. No accountability. It's unfair. Because any misrepresentation or allegation has no consequence, no heat. But, and myself and Mark Masters till 3 o'clock in the morning last night, and I was tired, let me tell you. And Mark had told me this when he arrived. He says, don't tell me right now. I've got to think of the speech for the first night. He goes, let's create the equilibrium press accountability policy. Interesting. Equilibrium press accountability policy. What is that? Well, all CEOs, they run and own a parent company, do they not? Now, a parent company is that company of their media subsidiaries. So such as CNN, for instance. CNN has a parent company who has a CEO that is accountable for the whole thing, right? So, and that CNN and the Time Warner, let's say it's Time Warner Cable, and if that merger goes through, AT&T Mobile. Okay. Now, these CEOs and the parent companies will now be held accountable and get a level of heat that the president gets when one of the staff or cabinet members make an error or misrepresentation. And the corporate parent must suffer the consequence. Right? Does that make sense? Is that fair? Okay. Do you realize, now, let me put it this way. So now we have a new press conference. The president has the press conference, and now he goes, okay, let's see, let's have the Time Warner Cable and possibly AT&T Mobile. Jim Acosta, go Jim. Or how about the Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post, go Post. Or how about the Comcast Universal, MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, Joey, go, hit it. What happens then? Trump voters represent 100% of the net profits of every single division, of every single parent company, of every single media outlet. Do you know that? Think about that. So knowing this, and we know this, 84% of the red counties were for Trump. Nearly 60 million people. Think of that. So knowing this, do you think that Jim Acosta, the dear man, and others, if they're called upon and rebranded by the new equilibrium press accountability policy, do you think they'll think twice about gumming our president's agenda for the first 100 days and the will of the people? Will they think twice about this? I'm going to answer for you. The raw force of the American people voting with them, with their pocketbooks, will completely interdict the subversive, elitist agenda of these companies' media divisions that are running amok. That's the possible outcome, okay? This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the media, which is a fourth estate, should be held accountable by the people. They have freedom of the press, and that's so important in our nation. No one is saying anything else. But there has to be accountability, because in my lifetime, as an actor for over a year, I've seen the media distort things, even things I've said. I've had a personal experience with that, where they distort something or misrepresent something you may have said to make it look like something else. So, in using this press policy, instead of the president doing trips to go around the press, this policy allows him to rebrand the press and let the American people bring consequences directly to the press's parent companies, and that's fair. Is it not? Okay? My dear friends, there once was a time in America, and I remember that, when the newspapers had no parent companies. A time when the news was held accountable by its subscribers or by the Nielsen ratings, whatever it might be. I remember those days. I remember watching the news on the little black and white set with the earphones when you had only 3 networks. And you felt for a minute, and you young kids probably don't remember that, but you felt a certain sense of absolute honesty and integrity with the press. Now, there may have been things going on, but you didn't feel what I feel today, what I see today. I do not see the same thing. Those days are now gone, and a new set of conflict of interest transparency measures must be applied to the corporate media. This is the solution, and with such a solution, how long do you think CNN's Jim Acosta and the other companies would last? My dear friends, it's up to us. We have to be the wings. We have to be, there's hawks out there trying to peck out the eyes of our president. We have to be the first line of defense. He asked it the other night in his speech, did he not? Watch our backs. That's been told. Great Mike Pence. All of you, God bless you. Thank you for having me here. God bless America. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.